Hey everyone, this is Pete, and welcome to Atari A to Z Anthology. In this series we'll be looking at the Atari 2600 output of Activision, EXEC and Absolute Entertainment, as chronicled in the various Activision Anthology releases for various platforms. As much as I like those collections though, emulation has come a long way in terms of accuracy since they were released, and as such we'll be looking at the games using the most up-to-date emulators, and foregoing some of Activision Anthology's more gimmicky features such as the special projection modes it was possible to play the games in. The focus here is very much on the games themselves, because back in the heyday of the Atari 2600, an Activision, EXEC or Absolute Entertainment badge was almost always a guarantee of a quality release. Almost always, anyway. Today we come to Beamrider, a 1983 release for a variety of platforms, including Intellivision, Atari 2600, Atari 5200, Atari 8-bit home computers, ColecoVision, Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum and MSX. Beamrider was designed by one Dave Rolfe, whom the original instruction manual for the game describes as a seasoned software designer with an academic background in engineering and computer science. Apparently in his spare time he can be found bicycling or listening to rock and roll. Now Rolfe might not be a hugely well-known name in the industry compared to some of his peers, but in an interview he conducted with Digital Press back in 2007 it shed a bit more light on his career. It was a fairly prolific one. His contributions to gaming include the arcade title Starfire for EXEC, which was the first arcade game to allow a player to input their name into the high score table, some standalone handheld games for Mattel, a number of Intellivision games, and perhaps most notably, the Intellivision's Executive ROM or EXEC operating system. Rolfe's personal instructions for Frogs and Flies, an Atari 2600 adaptation of Intellivision game Frogbog, became somewhat notorious for featuring less than complimentary words about the Atari 2600 and its players. I quote, "Basically, VCS Frogs and Flies is a stupid game directed at stupid kids who come from stupid families which are headed by slothful parents who were too ignorant and cheap to buy the Intellivision master component, so they bought the indescribably bad Atari VCS unit instead. Most Atari games are so moronic that, as the Atari commercials delight in pointing out, they can be mastered in a number of minutes by the family pooch. The VCS unit itself is so worthless that it has been personally denounced by Richard Nixon and hailed by Carl Sagan as the greatest boon to mankind since the scratch and sniff bicycle seat." Rolfe's idea for Beamrider, which was initially released for Intellivision, came about after he'd started his new company Cheshire Engineering, who were under contract to Activision. Supposedly Rolfe was leaning back in his chair staring at the ceiling one day when the receding grid of lines on the ceiling tiles suddenly became a spaceborne playing field in his mind's eye. Rolfe elaborated on this in his interview with Digital Press that his colleague Tom Lowry actually developed the basic concept, but he fleshed it out and worked on the details. Rolfe also notes in the interview that after leaving Mattel he was no longer allowed to use anything in the EXEC operating system, despite the fact that he'd written it, because it constituted a trade secret. There was a certain degree of bad blood after a dispute over revenue for the M-Network Intellivision ports to Atari 2600, and he was keen to avoid any nasty legal issues, so he wrote Beamrider for Intellivision without using the EXEC ROM at all. This actually worked out quite well, as it gave him a lot more memory and storage space to work with. "We were trying to create some new effects," he said, "so it was helpful to be able to choose a path based on exactly what we wanted to do, instead of being influenced by the concern that we should choose the path that the EXEC made easiest. The structure of the EXEC had driven a lot of the mainstream games up until that point, but any structure can be a double-edged sword, so we were given more freedom to transcend." Rolfe handled the port of Beamrider to Atari 2600 himself, though he notes that Larry Zwick developed the graphics, noting that it was quite a feat considering how difficult it is to generate an elaborate VCS display. He also delegated the role of signing his name in the game manual to his colleague Kevin Miller because, in his words, "I figured I didn't need a million copies of my signature floating around the world. Why make it easy to forge my name?" Now, despite Rolfe's less than complimentary words about the Atari 2600 in his personal notes about Frogs and Flies, his port of Beamrider to Atari 2600 is regarded as a real highlight in Activision's back catalogue. So let's go play Beamrider. Okay, here we are with Beamrider. Let's take a quick look through a scan of the manual first of all before we get onto the game itself. Beamrider Orientation Guide. Scoring. Points are scored each time an enemy saucer, chirper ship or sector sentinel is destroyed. Point values increase as you progress to higher sectors. The exact point value for each hit appears in red, briefly replacing your score the moment an enemy craft is destroyed on Coleco version only. Thanks for that. Also, if you manage to destroy the sector sentinel, you'll receive an additional bonus for each ship in your fleet. Beamriders are a breed all their own, part warrior, part astronaut and part daredevil. If that sounds like you, and if you've made it to Sector 14 with a score of 40,000 points or more, join the club. Send us a photo of your TV screen showing your sector and score, along with your name and address, and we'll send you the emblem that will identify you as an official Beamrider. Be sure to write Beamrider and your score on the bottom corner of the envelope. Indicate Coleco or 2600. So yeah, like most Activision games, there is a challenge that you could send off for. So if you send a photograph of your high score and of reaching Sector 14 with 40,000 points or more, you could declare yourself an Activision Beamrider and get a sew-on patch for your jacket and get beaten up at school. Anyway, Beamrider, the Restrictor Shield, 99 sectors deep, now surrounds the Earth. You are the Beamrider on a mission to clear the shield. There you must demolish an onslaught of alien frights as you dodge from beam to beam. Sector after sector, the deluge deepens. So, select level of difficulty by pressing its corresponding number on the keypad. 2600 users skip to number 10. On a 2600, press reset and move joystick to start the action. Laser lariats are fired by pressing the fire button. To fire torpedoes, push the joystick forward. Use the left difficulty switch to select 2600 level of difficulty. A for advanced, B for basic. Turn power off before removing cartridge. The space station. Whenever your ship is destroyed or when you complete a sector, you will return via hyperspace to the space station. When you're ready to continue, move the control stick up. The hatch doors will open and you'll be on your way. The space station does not appear in the Atari 2600 version. There are 15 enemy saucers in each sector. They all must be destroyed before you can go to the next sector. Each time a saucer is hit, the number in the upper left corner of the screen will count down by 1. The Sector Sentinel. When all 15 white enemy saucers have been destroyed in a sector, the Sentinel ship will cruise across the top of the beams. Only a torpedo can destroy it. Okay. And then the rest is sort of telling you a bit about the various types of enemy that you've got here. Whether they're vulnerable. And we can see that there's a couple of things that aren't in the 2600 version. So here we are. Here's how to be a Beamrider. Tips from Dave Rolfe, designer of Beamrider. Greetings from Sector 26 and moving. If you want to make it to the outer sectors, pay attention to these tips. Maintain precise control by learning to tap the control stick to move your ship a single beam at a time. And stay near the center beam so you won't get boxed into a corner with nowhere to run. Zap the white enemy sources as early in their approach as possible. And check this out, you can hit them when they're slightly off the beam before they can drop their missiles. When you see a yellow rejuvenator, don't abandon all caution as you move to catch it or you'll likely wreck your ship. If an enemy object is blocking the rejuvenator, you can use a torpedo to blast it out of the way. Then catch the rejuvenator. But remember, you only have 3 torpedoes and they're your only weapon against the Sector Sentinel. And while we're on the subject, when the Sentinel is about to approach, don't sit on the beam you plan to shoot from. Green blockers will swarm onto it immediately. Instead, wait on the beam you're not going to shoot from, like the one near the Sentinel's first sighting. As soon as the blockers are locked onto that beam, zip over to an unblocked beam and torpedo the ship. Last but not least, take time to notice the enemy attack movements. They generally follow a pattern of motion that allows you to anticipate many of their moves. With practice, you'll be in the outer sectors before long. If you get too far out, come down to Earth for a while and drop me a line, because reading your letters is the next best thing to designing games. Isn't that nice? But yeah, there we go. Now, as it happens, Dave Rolfe's signature is not in this edition of the manual at all, but it would have appeared in some of the releases of the game. Anyway, that is the manual for Beamrider. The only thing left is to go and play it, so I'll be right back. Okay, here we are with Beamrider. Let us begin. Sector 01. And off we go. So your aim in this, as it said in the manual, is to destroy the white saucers, which will gradually come down the screen, and you must fire your laser lariats at them. So in essence, it's a bit like Tempest. It's a bit like Tempest, but it's sort of lane-based structure. That's one of the rejuvenators. more to go. Oops! I failed to torpedo the ship. But it then just moves you onto the next sector anyway. Okay, so now we start getting these brown rocks appearing, which you can't destroy, so you have to avoid them. That puts an interesting additional twist onto the basic formula. Oops. Not doing too well, am I? Again. So, although this version of the game lacks a few features compared to the other versions of the game, it's still a very solid shoot 'em up. The responsive controls are really nice. There we go, that's how you get rid of the Sentinel. You destroy him with a torpedo. Then you get a bonus, and you get your torpedoes replenished, and you're good to go for the next one. And it's harder again. So I guess we'll be getting a few more rocks appearing this time. The sources will be a bit more likely to shoot at us. And things will just be moving a little bit quicker. There's a rejuvenator. A bit extra life for us. Oh no! I literally walked straight into that one. Right. So if you die in the middle of a stage, you don't have to go back to the beginning of it. It's just if you die while fighting the Sentinel, it'll take you to the start of the next stage. Tell you what this game reminds me of quite a bit. In terms of its visuals and its sound effects in particular, is Sega's Buck Rogers' Planet of Zoom, which had a very similar sort of moving over a series of lines to simulate speed. The explosion sound, I think, was pretty much identical, and the appearance of the enemy sources is very similar as well. So, oh, I shot a rejuvenator, that's what caused that. So I wonder if there was some sort of, if there was a little bit of unofficial cloning going on there. It certainly wouldn't be the first time that a game paid homage to an established classic that had previously been released on something. Right, on to Sector 5. Come here. There's one big reason I like this more than Tempest, and it's the fact that the enemies can't get onto, like, the lane you're in. My biggest bugbear with Tempest is when the enemies get on the side of the tube, and I just don't know how to deal with them, aside from using a super zapper, which I don't always have access to. Whereas in this, if you miss an enemy approaching... Oh, I missed it. No bonus for me. Oh, we're getting the blockers appearing outside of the Sentinel encounter now. They have clear behaviour that you can manipulate there. You can see that they move to the lane that you're on and then move down the screen. Alright, let's have another go at that. That's good fun. This is in classic arcade game tradition, mirroring things like asteroids and Space Invaders. The background sound in this gradually increases in intensity as you progress. Rejuvenator, thank you very much. Yeah, this is a really nice little game actually. Missed. And it's quite in keeping with what I've said about other Activision games, which is that these days, if I want to play a quick game of something, I don't reach for a mobile game. I will more often than not reach for an Atari 2600 game. Because the nature of the way they're designed and their structure and so on means that they're absolutely ideal for a play session of just a few minutes. Because that's how they were originally designed. They were originally designed to resemble arcade games. In some cases recreate arcade... No! In some cases recreate arcade games, but... in other cases, such as this one, they just sort of pay homage to arcade games. And this has got everything a good arcade game needs. It's fair, it's got a nice element of risk versus reward. It's got clear mechanics that you can learn. And there is never, ever a feeling in this game that when something goes wrong, it is the fault of a flaw in the game. It is always your fault when something goes wrong in this. Because the mechanics are so clearly defined and so well implemented in this that you can't blame the game. You can't blame the game for any mistakes you make because well, the game is up front with you. The game is up front with you about how it works, how it expects you to play. And so there's no real arguing with that. It's just a very well designed game. That is implemented really nicely. And this was a common trait of Activision games in general, but just things like the scoring and stuff in this is really well implemented. Like you get clear amounts from each enemy, and you get that bonus at the end of each stage, based on your remaining lives and torpedoes, which gives you incentive to try and play better to get the bigger scores. Oh. It's no good. Don't think I'll be getting my patch today somehow. we'll see. Oh dear. That's not going to help, is it? That's not the way to get an Activision patch. Very welcome Rejuvenator there. The white saucer's shots don't block your bullets, which is good to know. The green blockers do though, as do the rocks. It's a lot to think about. Some surprisingly complex mechanics in this. No, no good. No good. On to Sector 7. What awaits this time? More blockers. Oh dear. This is tough. No, no! Oh, disaster. Right, let's have one more go. So this is a nice game because it's still got those sort of arcade-style short game sessions, but it's got a little bit more depth than some of Activision's other games. Like if you compare it to something like Barnstorming that we looked at recently. Individual games of Barnstorming are very short. And in comparison, a single run through this takes a lot longer. That does make a certain amount of sense given that you're playing for score rather than time in this one. So you're not trying to complete this as quickly as possible, you're trying to complete this as skillfully as possible. And survive for as long as you can. Stop avoiding my shots. But yeah, definite Buck Rogers vibes from the enemy designs and the overall look and feel of this game. Oh, too late. Too late. I am doing poorly. Right, onwards. Yeah, the more I play this, the more I realise what an exceptionally well-designed game this is. It's smooth, it's accurate, it's responsive. It makes damn good use of the 2600 hardware. It's like there's not a hint of the usual sprite flickering stuff that you get in 2600 games on this. Not a hint of it. It looks great. Doesn't even sound particularly offensive. And anyone who can make the Atari 2600 not sound offensive deserves a medal. This is making good use of the sounds that the 2600 is capable of. I'm not trying to do too much. There we go. I think you've got to be not shy about using your torpedoes. Because yes, you only have 3. But if you can blast through a blocker and then immediately hit the sentinel after that, that's not a bad thing. Come on, come here. Oh, damn it. That was being too liberal with the torpedoes. I will freely admit that. Straight into the bullet. Straight into the bullet. There we go, that was a nice shot. That was a nice shot. Onward. Less good. Less good. Oh no! I feel like we're doing quite well for score this time. I don't remember getting above 10,000 before, but then I guess I haven't really been paying that much attention to score. I did. Oh! Oh, you cheeky little bugger. Well, I know I'm not getting that Beamrider patch anytime soon. But yeah, that's good fun. That is a great game. That's still a great game. And the 2600 version is a very solid version of it. Yes, it lacks some of the features of the Intellivision and the Atari 8-bit and the ColecoVision versions, but it's perfectly competent, plays well, makes good use of the 2600's capabilities, as you can see. It's just a fun game. So yeah, give it a go. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.